Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Faith Forum. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for coming today. Those of you that are here in person and those that are watching online, we welcome you. Christ Church is a spiritual home for all people, and I'm really glad that you have taken the time today to do something for your soul. We're all under so much pressure right now with all the turbulence and all the change. And we know that what Christ calls us back to is to a deep spirituality so that we can center ourselves and find peace. And here in our spiritual home, it is our vocation to explore the matters of the heart. And so today we're going to be having a conversation as a way of beginning that. And before I introduce our guests, I'd like to begin with prayer. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. God, our Father, you see your children growing up in an unsteady and confusing world. Show them that your ways give more life than the ways of the world, and that following you is better than chasing after selfish goals. Help them to take failure not as a measure of their worth, but as a chance for a new start. Give them strength to hold their faith in you and to keep alive their joy in your creation. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, we pray. Amen. Well, it's a great joy to welcome Charley Stillwell and his wife Sally here today to have a conversation about the life and journey of teenagers. Charley is the head of school at the Episcopal High School in Alexandria. Before that, he spent almost 2 decades at St. Christopher's School in Richmond. Before that, he was a teacher at St. George's in Rhode Island. He's a graduate of Woodbury Forest and Princeton University, and he has dedicated his life to this challenging vocation of mentoring and encouraging and empowering students and families to help their children take what I think Joseph Campbell said well, which is the hero's journey into discovering who they are, to finding meaning in life, and seeking a purpose greater than themselves. Charley, we can't thank you enough for being here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So, Charley, I want to begin with what's probably going to be a difficult question for you, if I may. Talk to me about how you, as a graduate of Woodbury Forest, and a head of Episcopal, how do you resolve that tension that happens at the Woodbury game? Is it the Woodbury game or the Episcopal game?
It's just the game.
It's just the game. Okay. All right. I think we've done a little bit of research here, Charley, and I think there's a picture that I'd like to show. Can you tell me who that little guy is right there?
Well, that would be me.
Yeah. So as a way of introduction, just tell us about growing up. I mean, you've been in Episcopal schools literally your entire life. What was it like growing up at Woodbury?
It was a wonderful experience to grow up in a boarding school setting. I mean, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child, and so you can imagine the children who grow up on campuses like Woodbury or Episcopal have all of these wonderful adults who are committed to young people who are there to help raise them. And my father was a longtime teacher and administrator at Woodbury, and this is actually the wonderful class of 1969. There's a guy right in the middle. Some of you may know these faces. I'm sure a few were from Charlotte, but Bill Arnold, who was one of my true heroes as a little guy, who had a tragic situation, dying as a football player at the University of North Carolina, and one of the biggest awards that Woodbury is named for Bill but they adopted me. This was the W Club, the varsity athletes of the school.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the chance to be connected to a caring, loving community that focuses on raising young people in the right way is really terrific. And there are great mysteries in life. Resolving the Woodbury Episcopal dichotomy in my existence is an interesting challenge. But I feel fortunate to love both institutions, and I think rivalries that are based on respect, it's a really wonderful thing for young people to experience, having a chance to be part of something like that.
Well, I know Woodbury's not technically an Episcopal school, but we sure have a lot of Episcopalians up there. Talk to me about entering the vocation of teaching. What was it? I mean, that certainly is a vocation. I mean, graduating from Woodbury and Princeton, there would have been a lot of opportunities for you and doing a lot of different kinds of things. Surely, your peers went a lot of different directions. What was it about teaching in particular that appealed to you?
I think it was the fact that the adults that I greatly admired, that had helped to raise me, were these amazing teachers and coaches that I had at Woodbury and at Princeton, and I just really fell into it without thinking a whole lot about it. I spent my summers working at the summer camp at Woodbury and the summer school at Woodbury as a teacher, and I knew when I was coming out of college that that's really what I wanted to do, and was fortunate to be given an opportunity to teach at a great Episcopal boarding school in New England, St. George's, right out of school.
Mm-hmm. And then talk to me about the moving to be the vocation of a head of school. We have at least one other head of school here. What courageous work that is. Tell me about moving into that role. What's the vocation of a head of school?
Well, I think probably people who become heads of school journey down that path for different reasons. I think I sort of fell into it to some extent. I was a teacher and a coach, and was asked by a friend who had become a head of a school to be the leader of his upper school program at a wonderful boys' school in Baltimore called Gilman, and at a very young age, and hadn't really necessarily expected to go in that direction right away, and then got asked by a group of folks in Richmond that I knew, also at a young age, to consider coming to St. Christopher's and to head the school. I think for me, I think it helps as a headmaster or head of a school to be someone who starts with a love for teaching and a love for coaching, a love for young people, and supporting them on their journey. And then your job as a school leader is really to set a mission that gives the adults the best chances to support the students, and the students the best chances to become their best selves.
I wonder, as you look at the just 30 years of this vocation that you've been a part of, what would you say, I mean, such an interesting vantage point, have been some of the most dramatic changes that have happened sort of in the education space, as well as just sort of the pressures that teenagers are feeling today?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that the prayer in the prayer book, which talks about children growing up in unsettling times, tells us that these issues aren't new. At the same time, I would say that I think all of us know, as we think about our children or our grandchildren, that over the last 20, 25 years, the pace of change around us, different issues that are swirling around us have made it much more difficult and challenging on young people. When you think about the normal pressures they face of being worried that they're going to not live up to the expectations of the adults around them that they care so much about, or that they're going to, the challenge of now navigating this college admissions process that has become so much more competitive, or this new world of social media that puts a whole nother level of stress on young people with the images that are shared about, what it means to be happy, or, the self-image challenges for young people. And then in just the last couple of years, you layer on the pandemic and the frustrations and emotions that have been connected with all of the issues that we've been trying to deal with. Your institution here as a church, schools, how to stay safe, how to stay focused on mental health and wellness at the same time, and how to do things as best as you can with a lot of competing information around you. I think the increased level of divisiveness in our society makes it very difficult for young people. The notion that too many people, I think, are quick to demonize others who represent different points of view, rather than the notion that good people can disagree, and that there may be valid reasons for a variety of perspectives, and to help young people learn how to wrestle with those differences as they mature in their own views. So I do think it's much more difficult growing up today than when you and I grew up, or many of us grew up, and we need to think carefully about how best to help young people navigate in that environment.
Let's talk about those pressures that you mentioned. And I'm going to be asking this as a parent myself of 3 children, 3 teenagers. I'm sure it's hard to quantify, and maybe it's not an entirely easy question to answer, but how much of the pressures do you think our teenagers face these days are pressures they put on themselves versus pressures that are put on them by their parents? Is that fair?
Sure. No, I think that's a good question. I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure that young people put on themselves. But I think the pressure that they put on themselves is often reflective of their perceptions of the views of many of the key adults around them, or these social constructs like social media. But I think we as adults, parents, grandparents, educators, faith leaders, how we handle and approach our children and young people with our own views and our own stresses and anxieties, I think plays a big part in the difficulties that young people can have.
It's difficult to know what to do as a parent, isn't it? I mean, it's like, okay, do I guide? Do I direct? Do I warn? Do I cast this, horrible future that you must avoid unless you do this? And I think the thing that I guess I want to talk to you also about is when we put this pressure on, there's a degree of sort of what we might call healthy achievement and then unhealthy achievement. And I'm struck that healthy achievement is about coming into who you are, just trying to figure out what matters most and allowing people a certain freedom, versus a completely conscripted life that unless you do these things, it's not that you're not going to be successful. It's that you're not going to be good enough. Talk about that, the difference between achievement, healthy striving and unhealthy striving.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we talk a lot about at Episcopal is the importance of being a place where the students can truly thrive in more areas of school life than they might at any other place. And when we talk about that notion of striving, and I think you know that, you see it in your children or your grandchildren, how they look, how they're engaged, how they handle different situations. You really can tell when a young person is thriving and when a young person is struggling. And I think thriving for us is where you find that sweet spot between rigor and wellness, where you have enough stress on your plate so that you're at your absolute best, but not so much stress on your plate that it begins to become debilitating. And I think it's very difficult for all of us as adults to know how to support our children or young people in finding just that sweet spot for each individual, because that sweet spot is different for every child. And we all love our children. You know, you love your children as parents. We love our students at the school. But we all struggle with difficulties too. I think parents worry about, I think we're in a time where there are economic uncertainties and adults who wonder, is this next generation of young people going to be the first generation where their quality of life may not be as strong as ours as adults? I think there are there are adults who worry, as you say, about, I feel like I need to guide my child, push my child in just the right way, but I might make mistakes. And if I make mistakes, are there going to be lasting impacts from that? So I think it's increasingly difficult to know how to handle things as the adults. And I think one really important message for all of us as adults and for young people too is the need to take a deep breath and to step back and to focus on the importance of relationships. And I think you all realize that what young people want more than anything is to be known and appreciated and valued and loved, and that's more important for them than the notion that we've given them just the right advice or just the right guidance at just the right time. And the college process doesn't help, because there are anxieties on the part of all of us as adults that there seem to be just a certain number of schools that are going to be the places that are going to lead my child to have the successful career and the successful life. And if I don't do the right things to make sure they get into just those group of schools, it's going to be really difficult. And I think we need to find ways to broaden some of those perspectives and to realize that our children's journeys may take some interesting twists and turns, and we need to be there to support them and guide them and love them through those twists and turns, than to be anxious that some of those twists may actually cause these lasting detrimental impacts.
Say more about, you mentioned mental health. I'm curious, as you look at, again, the journey that you've been on in education, at what point do you think we really began to talk about mental health? I mean, we know that it's always been a stigma associated with mental health. When do you think we really started to talk about it? And what are the conversations, in your opinion, that we need to have, to extend this further?
Yeah, I do think it's been interesting that, and maybe it seems to me, in my experience at the schools where I've been, that it's probably been in the last 10 years or so that we've started to move away from the notion of there being a stigma associated with some of the resources there to help young people who are struggling with anxiety or signs of depression, other kinds of issues. And I think that's really important. I think for many of us, when we were growing up, there were sort of the pressures to be tough and toughen up, and that was the way to handle your difficulties and not really engage with your feelings in an open way. And so I think what we're seeing, because people are talking more about, I think they see the notion of counseling not as something you do to fix this bad problem, but actually a place you go to seek helpful advice and guidance and to develop the tools that will help you navigate some of these challenges. And this is just another helpful adult in your life who can be objective and is not connected to your parents, is not connected to your school or anything. It's just this independent entity. And I think what you see in colleges across the country, in schools like Episcopal and Woodbury and others, is an expanded level of resource around counseling, because the kids are more interested in seeking it. and the parents see the benefit of it as a helpful resource, not as a sign of a problem that needs to make me worried that maybe I haven't been as effective as a parent as I was supposed to be.
One of the things that we have learned as the conversation has gotten broader and broader around the mental health of generally and of teenagers is the need we have discovered to sort of scale up by bringing therapists on board and being able to offer what I think is sort of a singular offering that I've seen in any church, which is free mental health care. Someone can literally call and pretty quickly speak with someone about what's going on. Because I think churches and schools have a way of, are often sort of the first place people go. So, what's it been like for you to sort of take that on? Because it's a there was the school nurse, right, at the beginning, and now what does it mean for you to begin to do this work of mental health? And what's that like?
Well, I think of the school nurses who were there in our schools when we were young, and they were not a source of warmth and support back in the day. That was not a center of counseling assistance. And I apologize to Willie Mae Lee, as a famous nurse for many years at Woodbury Forest, but
our parishioners who are school nurses are amazing, just so you know.
Yes.
Yes.
No, and today it's entirely different, and I do think that it's really important for there to be a scaffolding of supports for students and young people, and all of us as parents are an important part of that scaffolding. Teachers, coaches, school administrators are important, but I do think as the students are, as students need different levels of guidance to handle the challenges that they're facing that have increased in intensity, it's important to have people who are really trained in doing that work effectively. The folks in a faith community that are trained as pastoral counselors is critical. To have a really talented counseling staff at a school like Episcopal is really important. But I do think, as you know, and we have many people who come to Episcopal who are Episcopalians or from other Christian denominations, have a significant background in a church experience, but we also have a number of kids who come who really don't have a lot of background in an active faith life, and so you need to help them understand the benefits of these resources as well. Sometimes the appeal of pastoral counseling is really helpful, and our chaplains play an important role. But I do think that having that counseling support is critical. And for certain individuals, certain young people, they're going to have a level of issue that's going to extend beyond even what a trained school counselor will be effective in doing. And then I think it's really great in a community like Charlotte or in a community like Alexandria in DC to have sort of another level of professional assistance when it's needed in a more significant way, when it's not just sort of more normal levels of stress and anxiety or depressive symptoms, but when it really starts to become, clinically diagnosed as anxiety issues or depression. Then you need to take those issues very seriously. And there's nothing more important than the health and well-being of students at our schools, or the health and well-being of our children when we're parents.
Mm-hmm. Say something about the college process right now. That has changed pretty dramatically. Say something about that, and then how very quickly here in the next couple of months is going to be the time when people are going to be finding out. What do you think kind of goes into the college process these days? How is that process changing? And how do you prepare kids for what can sometimes seem like life's great rejection?
Well, I think we all know that the college process has shifted over time and has become increasingly competitive. I think part of that's been driven by, unfortunately, by the rating system that was created by U.S. World and News Report, which rates schools on factors like their number of applicants, the low percentages of acceptance rates. So I think there are a number of schools that have many have thought to be terrific places for many, many years, and all the schools have now developed a much more significant number of applicants. I think that's even been expanded in the pandemic as schools have needed to become test optional, and students don't have to necessarily visit campuses anymore. Some of the campuses haven't wanted those visits. But what I think has been interesting is as schools have become more challenging places to where a student might be accepted, what's really happened is this amazing group of young people who tended to be directed to certain schools in the past, as they're having challenges being accepted, they're now going to an even broader group of really wonderful schools that have always been wonderful places, but in some communities haven't been as well known. And I think and the reality is that so many schools have an amazing group of adults who are there as the professors, and the educational program is really strong. But what also makes a college experience is the quality of the relationships you develop with your fellow students. And you want to be with a really interesting group of young people during your college experience. Now that way more people are applying for schools and struggling to get in certain places, a really great group of young people are now at all these other places that, if you're my age or older, were places that you might not have thought to look in the past. I think there is this changing dynamic where individual students who used to apply maybe to 4 or 5 schools when they were going through the process, as they're worried about that process, now will apply to 12 or 14 schools. So, and if you're not getting accepted in a number of places, as you say, it's just additional messages of disappointment if that's the way it works out. I think that we try to work hard to help our students and our families know that there are a lot of great opportunities out there, and people who go to a number of different schools end up going on to having amazing careers in all these different directions. But it's hard for all of us as adults to move away from what our perspectives of the best places were when we were going through the process. And we all need to work on that. I think it's important at a school like Episcopal, we want to have an amazingly strong academic program and other opportunities, so our absolutely most talented kids are able to be competitive anywhere at any school in the country. But I also think it's important for us to help our students who come, who also come across a range of abilities academically or in other areas, realize that there are many more great places out there for them than they may realize.
One of the most moving things that I've seen is there's a particular person who, right as the college application process is unfolding and people are being notified of their acceptances, this person every year tweets, for all of you who don't get into the school that you hope for, there's another place that's going to be wonderful. And Charlie, the coolest thing is the comments. These are actually happy, encouraging Twitter comments. You hear all these stories, hundreds of stories of people say, I didn't get in that place, but I got in that place, and that's where I met my spouse, or I discovered my vocation, or I did this, or I did that. And it's just like, wow. And you get to the end of it, and it's almost like the greatest thing that can happen is you don't get what you want, because I think there's a song, you find what you need, right? Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about diversity and privilege. We know, obviously, Episcopal is a place of great privilege, and I know that you have made great efforts to be more inclusive of people from different backgrounds, race, and socioeconomic. Tell me what that journey has been like for you to sort of draw the circle wider to have a more inclusive school.
Well, I do think that some of the most powerful learning lessons that happen for young people in school are the nature of the relationships that they build with their classmates and their friends and the young people who are around them, as well as with the adults who are there to guide them and to inspire them. And I think what we have found at Episcopal, and this is a process that started certainly before my arrival 6 years ago, but it's been interesting to continue to connect closely with amazing families who have been part of our school for generation after generation, especially in areas from the Mid-Atlantic or the Southeast. Virginia and North Carolina are still the two most significant states for the school in terms of students at the school. And yet to enrich the learning environment by now having kids who come to the school from 33 different states, 25 different countries. And what's fascinating about that, especially for us as we're sort of right next to Washington, D.C., where you also have all these people coming together in our national government from all around the country, is we have students who come from rural backgrounds, from urban backgrounds, from very conservative perspectives, from very liberal perspectives, from all these different international perspectives. And then what's really important for us is to be a place where all of those young people can feel valued and appreciated, and given the opportunity to be curious about each other and to learn from each other's views and perspectives as they wrestle with the process to mature in their own views. And to be a place not where you are telling kids what to think, but encouraging them how to think and how to think creatively and to think critically and to learn from each other. And I think that we feel we have an opportunity to be a place where we can show how then those young people can learn how to bridge across their differences and how to understand their common humanity and those core values that are so critical in our school: the importance of honor, the importance of respect, our Episcopal church traditions of treating every person with dignity as a child of God. That those are things that can bring these young people together across all those differences. And they can learn how to be collaborative leaders, because we need young people who can work together to step up and help us solve a lot of the challenges that we're facing in society in the future. And we sort of feel that we could actually be a place that can show the folks across the river at the Capitol how to work together, because we're just not very good at that right now in our country, and that, I think, it hurts us. And that's a source of tension and stress for our children to see how difficult it is for people to work together. So I think what's nice in that setting is you're not moving away from the core values that have been critically important to institutions like Woodbury or Episcopal for a long time. And you're continuing to appreciate the amazing families who've been part of your school for a long, long time. And we take great pride in wanting to attract children of alumni to the school and want to continue to have that experience in their families. But we think it actually helps enrich the learning for everyone to have old perspectives, new perspectives, all coming together. And that's just a model for helping the kids ultimately know how to navigate the divisiveness that they struggle with.
Yeah, and to be able to help kids take ownership of that, that's quite, I would imagine that would be quite a challenge. When we think about our work here at Christ Church, we think that our work is to engage, equip, and empower people to be the church in the world. And so if we know Christ to be literally our Lord and the one who we follow, then church really doesn't start here on Sunday. You know, it starts, well, it does start on Sunday as we leave. And so the world ought to be different, right? Because we live in it. And so, you know, I'm kind of wondering how you do that work of spirituality in a school where there is a lot of diversity. I'll say that, as you know, I've been very fortunate my kids have been in a lot of schools, but they are in great schools. But I have two boys in a wonderful Episcopal school that they love, and our daughter went to an Episcopal school and is at an Episcopal college. And I would say that the role of the Episcopal tradition and the chapel experience is sort of singular in its wonder and in its hospitality. How do you think about Christianity in the context of the Episcopal tradition, knowing that there's both the desire for people to know the love of God in Christ, to cultivate that intimacy and relationship, yet having to do that when you have a very diverse student body and a very diverse staff? How do you navigate that?
Well,
first, speak of what the Episcopal tradition means to you from the perspective of faith and spirituality.
Sure. Well, I have felt very fortunate that a significant part of my career has been spent in 3 different wonderful Episcopal schools. And I do think that the Episcopal school tradition is a wonderful model for education. I think it's very important for students to have a chance to be in a school that takes the concept of faith seriously, no matter what their particular faith tradition or approach may be. And I love the fact that the Episcopal school tradition it's not an evangelical tradition, but it's a wonderful vehicle through which you can help the students wrestle with really important issues and think carefully about who they should strive to be as adults. And I think that for us at Episcopal, even though we have certainly many students who are from other denominations or other faith traditions or not really schooled in faith, we are very confident in our Episcopal identity. I think it's important in our chapel program for the kids to experience what the Episcopal church tradition is, and the lessons of the Episcopal Church, and the beauty of the liturgy, and the beauty of the music. I think that language is important as a foundational piece for kids, no matter whether they will ultimately become Episcopalians themselves or not. And the chapel setting, we have 3 major chapel services a week, and then another optional chapel service on Sunday, where a lot of our other students will go to different denominational services, or and some of our students from other faith traditions on the weekends will go to their worship services. But in that setting, to connect with young people, to share stories that reinforce who they should strive to be, is incredibly powerful. And I think it's a place where they can realize that they're part of something much greater than themselves. And young people are very self-centered and self-focused, and some of these pressures like social media, if they stay too self-centered, become even more challenging. So to help them realize that they have the capacity and the responsibility to make a positive difference in the lives of others gives them an opportunity to consider ways to have meaning and purpose in their life. And I think they're hungry for that. And it's a very genuine, authentic way to be. And I think for the adults or for kids who come from other traditions, I think everyone can lean in to that vehicle of crucial educational mission. And the core values that come from the Episcopal Church are incredibly important core values for all of us to aspire to. The notion even from the prayer that you read, about not being caught up in pursuing selfish ways, but being focused on the fact that you can make a positive difference in the lives of others. That's the kind of hopeful message that's really important for young people these days.
Well, it's interesting that you make the connection between spirituality and social media, because social media has, of course, a lot of good aspects of it, but what we worry about is what we worry about, which is the harmful ways that social media, and it's here, it's not going away, and yet I think what spirituality can do is it can invite us to sort of pause and pray and think critically, what is this? Am I becoming this? Do I want to seek to become this? Or what forces are at play in my life here that this influencer is attractive, or this particular way of living is attractive? How do you navigate the issue of social media? It seems like everybody's like, take the phones, take the computers, 10 o'clock at night, done. So how do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very important issue, and I think it's an ongoing difficult challenge. And there's an educational component to it, obviously, where you need to help young people understand the challenges and pitfalls of their digital footprint and the lasting nature of their engagement with social media that they don't think about regularly as young people. And I think the way we have approached it at the stage of a high school student's situation, I think you start to get how we treat ninth graders versus seniors might be different, but I think you have to shift it towards a way of helping the kids know how to navigate the realities of it, as opposed to try to just shut them off from it. I don't think it's realistic to just completely take away their technology and have that be the answer. You have to help them understand the impact of it, and I think what that means is the adults need to understand the different elements of social media themselves. It's important to be having conversations with your children about their social media footprint. As a parent, it's important for us in a boarding setting to be having those kinds of conversations with the kids, and I'm sure that we could do even more of that in most schools than we do currently. And there's some interesting programs out there and individuals and different initiatives out there that are really geared towards helping young people think about how to use social media for positive, good, and positive initiatives, as opposed to some of the negative directions it can take us. But it means learning a lot about the ongoing, ever-changing nature of social media. And some of us who are older are not great at doing that, but you've got to lean into that process.
And we here in the past have engaged questions around social media, and we'll be creating more resources for parents. So, Charley, we've talked about a lot of things that all center around engaging, empowering kids to live in this complex world. What would you say when someone graduates from Episcopal? What's the profile? If they've done the work at Episcopal, what's the profile of a graduate, do you say? I know it's a big question, but yeah. What are the things that you hope, regardless of background, what do you hope that they'll take away from being at Episcopal?
Well, it's a great question and an important question, and Interestingly, one of the things that attracted me to Episcopal more than anything, as I was going through the process 6 years ago, was the mission of the school and the language in our mission that focuses on the importance of developing in young people two critical components, what we refer to as moral courage and intellectual courage. And I love that the mission adds that word courage to those components, because it's not just about being a good person or being a person who is intellectually engaged and thoughtful, but I think the courage piece connects it to the notion of action and doing something with those capacities to make a positive difference in the lives of others. But what was interesting, when I arrived, the school had not really stepped back and tried to define more specifically what we mean by intellectual courage and moral courage. And so we set out on this journey that you're describing. Who are we hoping our young people will be when they are, we graduate in the front circle of the school in front of the original house, Hoxton House, and as they're walking across the stage getting their diploma, who are you hoping that they have become or started significantly to become? And so we set about developing what we call our portrait of a graduate, which defines what we mean by intellectual and moral courage and identifies the character pieces and the academic skill pieces and the life skill pieces that we want to make sure we're developing in our young people more than they may have a chance to develop in other places. But not surprisingly, what we care most about are to make sure that our students understand there's nothing more important than the strength of their personal honor and their integrity and their ability to be respectful of others and empathetic and understanding the differences around them and knowing how to work effectively with others to accomplish important and helpful actions that can make situations more positive and better for others around them. I think there are so many life skills then that sort of play into that same level of collaborative effectiveness, and you want the young people to be interested and curious and sort of striving to understand the truth and having the humility not to be too quick to believe they know the truth. There's a great part of our portrait of a graduate that talks about helping our students learn how to lead and serve with humility and kindness. And I think that that humility piece is really critical. We struggle today with so much what may be misplaced certainty on both ends of the spectrum in lots of the debates that swirl around us. And I think it's important for us to, it's like in our faith life, we see now in a mirror dimly, and then we will see, face to face. We need to have a healthy dose of humility and to know that, and to want to understand, what can I learn from this other person? How do I have faith in humanity at a level where I will believe that this other person who goes at these issues in a very different way from me is trying to do that because they're well-meaning, and they're trying to seek the truth too. And how can I learn from that while also having confidence in my own moral compass and understanding what I believe is important to me too. And so we want our young people to develop that confidence that is going to position them to really step up and make that kind of positive difference, and to know those fundamental things, that they are known and they are appreciated and they are valued, but they have a capacity and a responsibility to make a positive difference in the lives of others. They can do that. They can be these important leaders, and it's those. For me, the intellectual courage part is really important, is really helpful. But if you don't get the moral courage part right, if you don't get the focus on honor and integrity piece right, the care and concern for other piece right, so much of everything else that we do in a school only matters so much. We don't want to be focused on this culture of achievement that can take us in tricky directions. We want to be focused on this culture of character. There's a great book by David Brooks, and where he talks about, our virtues, our resume virtues versus our eulogy virtues. And I think we want to balance more towards the eulogy virtues than just the resume virtues if we're going to really get things right.
I want to ask you 3 more questions.
I think we're about out of time.
Yeah,
Chip.
you think so? Yeah. The first question is, it seems like you remember the movie Parenthood, and there's this scene where the older father's talking to Steve Martin, and he says, "You never spike the ball, son, when it comes to parenting." And it seems like it's all about a long journey, of accompaniment. So my question I'd like to is to give us some questions, not some answers, right? What are some questions that you think parents should continually ask of themselves as it relates to parenting? Parents asking themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think the first most important question is for all of us as parents, or as we look in the mirror, do we feel that we're modeling the behaviors that we hope to encourage our children to pursue? Are we building healthy relationships with others? Are we following sort of a healthy work-life balance and appropriate self-care? Are we do we make sure that there's a healthy dose of humor and laughter in how we handle the challenges around us? Are we good about being curious and wanting to explore a variety of perspectives as we develop our own views? Or are we quick to judge those who think about things differently than us as being just problematic? So I think there are lots of behaviors that we can think about we would love for our children to pursue, that it's really important to model those behaviors.
Modeling.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, what about questions we should ask our kids on a regular basis other than, did you do your homework?
Well, I think they're important questions. From the parent perspective, there's are my own anxieties showing up in the anxieties of my children, and the flip side of that for our children is, are we helping our children focus on positives, and having and instilling a sort of a glass half full mentality, and a appreciation for a gratitude for the blessings. I think it's important to ask young people, what are the things that are most challenging for you right now, and how can I help? And actually engaging them in the process. I think sometimes we jump to assume that we know the challenges they're facing, and sometimes even make the mistake of thinking our own challenges are the challenges that they're struggling with. And I think young people like to have a sense of control in those conversations. So when you're asking for their suggestions, when you're guiding as opposed to problem solving, it can be helpful in that situation as well. I think it's really important to make sure that we're focusing on listening and normalizing the bumps in their road, that they're going to be bumps and they happen for everyone, as opposed to jumping right to problem solving and judgment. And it's hard for us as parents and adults not to jump right to judgment and problem solving, but to actually focus on the listening part and saying, yes, these are relationship challenges, you name the challenges, they happen to everyone, and they happen in different ways. I think you can I think you also can ask your child, who is someone that you know who could really use your help right now? Is there someone at school? Is there a friend? Is there a younger person where you could make a real difference for them? Because I think if you give children a positive path to do something meaningful, you start to help them build that confidence. When you have peer mentoring situations in schools where older students are helping younger students, even the most awkward, uncertain older child, when they help a young student, you can just see the light turn on, and that notion of thriving starts to come about, and they're walking a little taller and feeling better about themselves. That I can do this, I can make this kind of difference. So you've got to position the kids to be successful in those ways.
Last question. What gives you hope? We're talking about the power of hope this year, and we see our children growing up in an unsteady world. So what gives you hope?
I think there are plenty of things that should give us hope. We mentioned earlier that this stigma that used to be there around the notion that children who have difficulties with stress or anxiety, there must be something wrong. Maybe I did something wrong as a parent. I think that stigma has sort of moved away, and we're much more open to the notion that these resources can be helpful in living a fulfilling life. I think the biggest source of hope for me is that our young people, I think, are hungry for meaning and for heroic purpose. I mean, you see the numbers of kids who are rushing to see the next Avenger movie and the whole superhero phenomenon that's around us. I think that we have this opportunity I think young people want to be inspired, and we can find really positive ways to do that, and we can connect them with opportunities to show them that they can make a positive difference and they can work with others, and I think that gives them a great source of reassurance and confidence, and we can't lose sight of that. And I think one of the saddest parts about the pandemic is that it's made a lot of what has been in the category of service opportunities for kids much tougher to figure out. There's been a hesitancy, in just being out and about, and we need to get back to that part of what's so critical in terms of inspiring young people.
Charley, thank you. This has been a great hour. We really appreciate you and Sally being here today, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you.